We'll look at alternate appearances for Emperor Palpatine in Episode 9, the inclusion of Malak, Revan, and Nihilus in The Rise of Skywalker, and more on today's Star Wars video. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars video, and today we are, surprisingly, going to take a break from The Mandalorian and talk about The Rise of Skywalker, which came out, as I'm sure many of you know, just over a year ago today. So I didn't like The Rise of Skywalker very much. I know it's not a very controversial opinion, but I was really interested in the planet of Exegol and the return of Palpatine and the whole sort of mystery surrounding the Sith Eternal. I liked the aesthetics of the Sith capital or whatever it was. So I've got to admit, I was very bummed out when I got to the art book for The Rise of Skywalker and there was like nothing there relevant to what we saw in the movie. There's not a single Palpatine concept art piece in the entire book, which is just absolutely bizarre. That's why I was very happy to see Phil Shostak, a creative director over at Lucasfilm, tweet out a link to what ILM is calling Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, a design case study. So this document has lots of never before seen concept art. Of course, I will link it down in the description, but I also thought it'd be fun if we went over it and I pointed out some stuff that I thought was really interesting, because a lot of the art here, despite being attached to a movie that I don't particularly enjoy, is very striking. And I mean, it's ILM. By the way, if you want to skip directly to Palpatine, I don't want you guys to feel like I'm clickbaiting you. I will include timestamps down in the description so you can skip ahead to whichever part you want to watch. With that being said, we'll start with the design of Exegol itself, a planet which was seemingly always a part of the script for Episode 9, but went through a few different design iterations before ultimately settling on the very blue planet that we got in the movie itself. But it seems like there was always sort of the idea that there would be this Sith Citadel, and the planet through most designs had an Egyptian or Sumerian feel to it. Personally, I really like the idea of the Sith Citadel, and this document also confirms what many of us suspected, which is that the Citadel is placed kind of as an inverse to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. I'm also going to go out on a limb and suggest that there was probably a closer connection imagined at some point, because there is also concept art of Kylo Ren going to the Jedi Temple, so maybe initially it was some sort of portal, or there was a Force connection, a dyad between the two places. I don't know, I think I could probably do a whole video on that if you're interested. Alright, so before going on to this next section, I completely missed something really huge that I want to preface everything else with. One of the shots on Exegol apparently would have featured some of our favorite Sith Lords. I can see, just based on this image, Revan, Malak, Nihilus, and I'm guessing an individual who may be intended to be Darth Bane, his Clone Wars appearance. It's hard to tell exactly. This is really a bummer. It would have been the recanonization of cool Sith Lords from Star Wars Legends, although some of them, like Revan, did make it in through the visual dictionary as having Stormtrooper Legions, Sith Stormtrooper Legions named after them. Not quite as cool, but still pretty interesting. Anyway, back to my original recording. Inside the Citadel itself, we don't see a whole lot of design variation from what we got in the final film, but we do see some really striking up-close imagery of the Sith statues that kind of overwhelmingly dominate the interior of the Citadel. I love these statues. One of the first clips that was released from the early part of the movie was Kylo Ren going down the elevator into the bowels of the Sith palace, and I gotta say, that scene right there, and really the first 2 minutes or so of the movie, is really good. Unfortunately, these images, as they're attached to the website, are sort of low quality. It looks like these were actually going to be in the book at some point, because you can't click on a specific image or expand it to save it. Rather, you click on it and it sort of gives you a page form where you can see multiple together, which is interesting. I think my favorite image here is the two statues missing their jaws, mostly because it reminds me of Darth Malak, but it also has a sort of haunting Prometheus vibe as well. Moving on though, we get a good look here at Palpatine and how he could have looked different. In this one version, the device he's connected to is much larger and overbearing rather than the sort of marionette cables he's on in the movie. I'm not sure which I prefer more. Both are good, although I definitely do think the red here would have been preferable over the blue, which just ended up sort of washing out everything in my opinion. Still, we do learn that the equipment and whatever else was meant to look Imperial. It seems like that was always set, but what varied was the appearance of Palpatine itself, with the real question being, how decayed should he have been? I think they didn't go quite far enough in the movie. I like this one image here where He's got more machines going directly into him. It looks like the fluid that's keeping him alive is being pumped directly through his head. That is quite disgusting. I do think the hand was right, and we can see sort of another reference image of that where it looks even more disgusting, almost like it's been left to rot in water or something. Really gross. We can also see that this image here has Palpatine returning to his pre-disfigured form, sort of what Palpatine looked like before the battle with Mace Windu, and I quite like this because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that after Palpatine absorbed the power of Rey and Kylo and the Dyad and whatever else, that he transformed into his post-injury form, unless maybe that's what he always looked like and everything else was just a mask, as some people have said is possible. But yeah, I'm really curious, before we continue, which appearance of Palpatine you guys prefer. Do you think he was decayed enough? Should he have looked like his old useful Chancellor self after being revived? I think that look that we see, where he does look like the classic Ian McDiarmid, would have been really, really good with those red robes, which I thought were pretty cool. And of course, very extra for Palpatine just to have sitting around. Moving on, the one thing that I thought was pretty disappointing is that we never really get any alternative designs for the Sith Star Destroyer. Basically, it says the team used the classic model from the original trilogy, but retrofitted with a new cannon that would run along the underside of the hull. And yeah, I'm sorry, but this just sucks. I think this was a time issue. There wasn't time to design a new compelling Sith ship, but it's really disappointing and it takes away from the final scene. Moving on though, we have the finale. It talks a little bit about Palpatine's death, but what I find more interesting is the idea of the fleet. And we see here kind of what we've seen anytime ILM has talked about the fleet, and that's the fact that they had to reach into their chest of Star Wars toys, pick a bunch out, and also use kit bashing to make additional ships. And a good example of that would be the Mon Calamari models we have here. We can see that they all have the same Home 1 base, but they've got different fins or whatever else. I think this is completely the wrong way to handle a battle of this magnitude. I think it would have been a better idea to focus on a few ships, then have the battle tell a narrative. You can even have stuff going on in the background, but you could have very, very low quality ships, almost like in certain scenes of Return of the Jedi, that you can't see very well, that wouldn't need a fully rendered model. Instead, you just have this kind of gray blur, which doesn't end up being very interesting in my opinion. It sucks too because some of these new designs are fairly interesting. I like these MC-95 cruisers. I think they could have been an interesting star of the battle, especially if the team had time to meddle with them a bit more instead of just kit bashing existing pieces. They also mentioned how the final battle at Exegol initially happened at sunset, so instead of there being these sort of blue tones, it was much brighter, but they found that didn't work for the mood the film was trying to set. We had some evidence of this because the very first teaser released for episode 9 had a shot of a ship that looked like Imperial 1 Star Destroyer with an orange background. I thought this was very, very interesting. Personally, I would have really preferred this over the blue, especially where they went with blue for Palpatine's chamber as well. I think just changing that to red and having the battle being set during the daytime would have been more interesting, at least aesthetically. And they talk about the shot where the Resistance fleet or the Galactic fleet is retreating, and I think that would have been a much better template for the rest of the battle itself, because they focus on a few ships and use smoke and other techniques to obscure what's going on in the background. So there's still the presence of a large fleet, but they can have more intricate actions with a few key ships. They should have done that for more of the film, because that one scene alone than just one gray mob of triangles being attacked by another. But that's really all they have for episode 9, at least the stuff that wasn't already covered in the art book. There are some more photos in the actual document itself, which again I've linked down in the description. I encourage you to peruse it whenever you get a chance, but that's all from me. Hopefully we get these released sometime in a little bit higher definition. I'd really like to take a better look at some of these shots, but until then guys, have a good one, be safe, and may the Force be with you.